Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. New York JFK International Airport buzzed like a beehive. Thousands of hurried travelers milled around each other in a mixture of fatigue, excitement, and impatience. The floor gleamed under fluorescent lights, loudspeakers blared incessant announcements, and the mingled smells of hot coffee and duty-free perfumes hung in the air. In the midst of this perfectly ordered chaos, a security guard, Mark Reynolds, walked with a firm step, accompanied by his faithful German shepherd, Rex the dog, an animal trained to detect explosives, drugs, and hidden threats, had keen eyes and unfailing discipline. Usually, he followed his master without ever flinching. But this morning, something was about to upset that balance. As they patrolled near the boarding areas, Rex suddenly slowed down. His muzzle twitched, his ears perked up. Mark immediately felt the tension in the leash. The dog had picked up a scent. An unusual scent. They were standing right next to a family, a young couple, visibly exhausted from the journey, were pushing a stroller containing a baby, fast asleep. The scene seemed ordinary, even reassuring. The mother, a woman with drawn but gentle features, absent-mindedly stroked the small hand protruding from under a blue blanket. The nervous father glanced quickly around him as if afraid of being observed. Suddenly, Rex yanked his leash with brutal force. He barked, growled, and leaped straight toward the stroller. His fangs snapped in the air, his claws scraping the shiny floor of the terminal. Screams immediately broke out. "My God! What is he doing?" screamed the mother, throwing herself in front of the stroller to protect her baby. "Back up!" Mark ordered, pulling with all his might on the leash. The passengers around the car stopped, stunned. Some already took out their phones to film the scene, convinced they were witnessing an unacceptable blunder. The dog, however, didn't give up. He persisted, his fangs snapping just inches from the baby's blanket. His instincts seemed stronger than anything. A heavy silence fell over the crowd. Why would an elite dog, trained to perfection, attack an infant? Mark, out of breath, sensed it. Rex had detected something. Something serious. And what was in that stroller might not have been at all what everyone thought. The screams still echoed through the crowded lobby. Several security guards rushed over, hands on their seatbelts, ready to intervene. The baby's father, Daniel Carter, violently stepped in front of the stroller, arms spread out like a shield. "Get that dog away. Are you crazy? You're going to hurt my son," he yelled, his face red with anger and fear. The mother, Emily, for her part, already had tears in her eyes. She pressed her hands against the stroller, as if to prevent Rex from accessing it. Around them, the crowd stirred, divided between indignation and morbid curiosity. Mark Reynolds, however, remained calm. He knew his dog too well. Rex had never made a single mistake in his 5 years of service. If he was acting out of control today, it wasn't a whim, it was a warning. "Sir, move away from the stroller immediately," Mark said firmly, without taking his eyes off Rex. "Never. He's my child. You have no right," Daniel retorted, tightening his grip on the stroller. The other officers surrounded the small family. The passengers, for their part, filmed every second, knowing that this moment would end up on social media within the hour. Then, with a sudden movement, Rex leaped again, pulling Mark forward. His fangs closed on the blue blanket. A whole section of the fabric ripped off with a sharp sound. The audience held their breath. Emily let out a heartrending scream. Daniel gripped the stroller as if he wanted to disappear with her. Mark, panting, then saw a detail that froze his blood. Under the torn blanket, he could not see the delicate skin of an infant, but a metallic surface, streaked with electrical wires. His heart skipped a beat. Rex hadn't attacked a baby. He had just saved hundreds of lives. An icy silence fell over the terminal, broken only by Rex's furious barking. The passengers, who had been complaining about a blunder just seconds earlier, were left speechless by what they had just seen: cables, metal, and the sinister glare of electrical components hidden beneath the baby's blankets. Emily burst into tears, but it was no longer the cry of a worried mother, it was a hoarse, nervous, almost desperate sound. Daniel froze. His eyes flashed, and in his forced stillness, Mark felt a dangerous tension. It's not what you think. Daniel stammered, gripping the stroller with all his might. Mark raised his hand, ordering his colleagues not to act hastily. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Every action counted now. If they were dealing with an explosive device, the slightest mistake could turn this hall into a wasteland. Everyone, move back immediately. Mark shouted, his voice echoing through the terminal. Panicked, the passengers retreated in disarray. Some abandoned their suitcases, others were already running for the emergency exits. The security guards raised their weapons, pointing them at Daniel. The air became stifling. Rex, however, continued to growl, his muzzle pressed against the stroller, ready to lunge at the suspicious object again. Mark held him back as best he could, his eyes fixed on the couple. Emily collapsed to the floor, repeating in ragged breaths. I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to. Daniel, on the other hand, suddenly regained a cold determination. His hands slowly slid under the stroller. Mark understood at once. Don't move, he yelled, aiming his gun at the man. Time seemed to stand still. The clicking of a mechanism was heard, barely perceptible, but enough to freeze the blood of all who heard it. The dog barked louder, as if it knew the worst was about to happen. The metallic clinking still echoed as Daniel squeezed the handle hidden beneath the stroller. His eyes, injected with rage and despair, stared at Mark with icy intensity. Everyone back up, or I swear I'll push, he shouted, his voice tearing through the fear-saturated air. The passengers who remained screamed and rushed for the exits. The loudspeakers continued to broadcast flight announcements as if nothing had happened, in stark contrast to the horror of the scene. Emily, still on her knees, reached out a trembling hand toward her husband. Daniel, I beg you, stop, she moaned, her tears streaming down her cheeks. But he didn't blink. It's too late, Emily. We've gone too far. Mark didn't blink. He knew that look, the look of a man with nothing left to lose. His finger was millimeters from what looked like a detonator. Rex, the German shepherd, was still growling, ready to pounce at the slightest sign. Mark tightened the leash, aware that the slightest sudden movement could precipitate disaster. Another officer approached quietly, but Daniel noticed his shadow and shouted. Just one more step and we all explode in here. Time seemed to stand still. Every breath echoed like a deafening swell. The remaining travelers, terrified, froze behind the columns, unable to look away. Mark took a slow breath and tried to calm the situation. Listen to me, Daniel, you don't need to do this. You still have a choice. A bitter smile twisted the man's face. The choice? The only choice we've been given is this. No one listens to us. No one sees us. So, today, they will see us. Under the stroller, a red light suddenly came on, a small digital screen had just been activated. A countdown had just begun. The small red screen flashed under the stroller, displaying a terrifying number, 00:10:00. 10 minutes. 10 minutes before the explosion. A cold shiver ran through Mark. Every second counted now. My God. One of the officers behind him breathed. Everyone in place. Mark ordered firmly, immediately regaining control. Alarm sirens blared throughout the airport. Panicked travelers rushed to flee the scene, some stumbling, others abandoning their luggage along the way. The loudspeakers went into emergency mode, demanding the immediate evacuation of the terminal. Daniel, for his part, remained camped in his position, his hands clenched on the device. Back up. If anyone comes near, I'll press down and everyone's dead. He yelled. Emily, shaken by tears, implored. Daniel, no, think of our son. Her words hit Mark like a bolt from the blue. A son, had she said that reflexively, or was there actually a child involved in this madness? Rex continued to growl, his nose brushing against the stroller, his instincts sharper than ever. Mark sensed his dog was ready to act, but he knew the animal couldn't disarm a bomb. "Anti-explosive team on the way," shouted an agent into his walkie-talkie. But Mark knew, 10 minutes was nothing in this kind of situation. Daniel seemed to be feeding off the surrounding panic. His eyes were growing increasingly feverish, his hands were shaking, but he refused to let go. "You don't understand. They robbed us, they crushed us. So today, we'll give them everything back." Mark tried one last time. "Daniel, look at me. You can stop this. Give me the stroller. You don't need to hurt innocent people." The meter displayed 00:09:02. Time slipped away like sand through one's fingers. Rex suddenly leaped forward, earning a scream from Emily and triggering a sudden gesture from Daniel. Silence fell for a split second. Daniel's finger was only a breath away from the detonator. Daniel's finger trembled over the detonator. Time seemed to stand still. Every breath, every heartbeat echoed in the icy silence of the terminal. Rex leaped again, his fangs snapping just inches from Daniel's hand. Panicked, Daniel jerked forward. And click dry sound. "Non!" Mark yelled, throwing himself forward. The meter immediately switched from 00:09:02 has 4 minutes and 59 seconds. The bomb had just accelerated. The agents shouted in alarm. Panic intensified around them, passengers crashing against the evacuation doors. The entire airport echoed with indescribable chaos. Emily, devastated, screamed, holding her head in her hands. "You're going to kill us, Daniel. You're going to kill everyone." But Daniel, far from retreating, seemed to sink into a furious madness. His eyes widened, his lips trembled. "You don't understand. This is the only way to show them. The only way." Mark knew he no longer had the luxury of waiting for the bomb squad. 4 minutes was too short. There was only one chance, to neutralize Daniel before he pulled the trigger. He exchanged a look with Rex. The dog, tense as a bow, was waiting for the command. One word, and he would pounce. But if Daniel pressed the button at the same time, it would be over. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind the crowd, loud and authoritative. "Agent Reynolds. Don't move. Let me talk." Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit, federal badge displayed, was walking forward with measured steps. His piercing gaze was fixed on Daniel. "I am the Special Agent David Collins, FBI," he declared calmly. He pointed at the stroller. "And I know exactly what's inside." All eyes turned to the man in the suit. His step was sure, his federal badge gleaming in the fluorescent lights. Even amidst the chaos, his tone remained implacable. Daniel gripped the stroller tighter. His face, already tense, turned livid. "What are you talking about? You don't know anything." He spat. Special Agent Collins continued forward, his hands clearly visible, without any sudden movements. "Oh yes, Daniel. I know. I know this stroller has never carried a baby." A murmur ran through the crowd of frozen witnesses. "I also know that you and Emily aren't just passengers. You're part of a sleeper cell, under surveillance for months." Emily's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. "Daniel, you swore to me they would never know." She moaned. Mark, still holding Rex in suspense, felt the truth fall into place like the pieces of a terrifying puzzle. Everything he had suspected was coming true. Collins continued, his voice sharp as a blade. "This bomb is no accident. It's connected to a much larger network. And you, Daniel, were just a pawn, disposable." Daniel's features twisted. Rage gave way to a dull ache. "That's not true. They promised me." The red screen continued to flash, 00:03:12. Mark intervened, his tone dry. Agent Collins, tell us what we need to do. How do we stop this? Collins stopped 3 meters from Daniel, his eyes fixed on the detonator. We can't stop it like that. The device is locked. But there's a flaw. A deathly silence fell. Daniel, you know that better than I do. The bomb won't explode until the biometric module is validated. Collins said, pointing at the mechanism. Then he added, coldly. And this module only accepts one fingerprint. Yours. The red meter now displayed 00:02:38 every second, hammered the air like a slap. Daniel gripped the detonator handle until his knuckles turned white. His eyes flicked from Mark to Collins, then to Emily, who was still crying on the floor. His gaze revealed a heartbreaking inner struggle. Collins, relentless, took another step. You know that, Daniel. As long as you keep your hand on that device, the bomb is armed. If you remove your fingerprint, it deactivates. A murmur of hope ran through the agents. But Collins didn't stop there. Unless you press now. In that case, you take everyone with you. Daniel gasped. His breathing was ragged, as if every word Collins said was hitting his mind hard. You don't understand. They had everything planned. They told me it was the only way. Emily, in a broken voice. Daniel, look at me. We don't have to die here. Think of us. Think of me. But Daniel shook his head, his face ravaged. You don't understand, Emily, if I release this device, they'll find us. You, me, and, he stopped abruptly, as if he had said too much. Mark frowned. And who, Daniel? Who else? The silence weighed. Then Emily looked up at him, trembling. Daniel, you really don't have. The counter went to 00:01:42. Collins stepped forward again, his voice hard as steel. Do you want to protect your family, Daniel? Then make the right choice. Let go of that handle. Betray those who manipulated you. Otherwise, you'll just be another dead pawn in their game. Daniel's hand trembled. His forehead beaded with sweat. His gaze shifted to Emily, then to the floor. A moment of silence, then he shouted, in a hoarse voice. I have no choice. His hand began to press harder on the detonator. Rex jumps. Rex leaped forward like an arrow, his muscles tense, his fangs ready to strike. The attack was so swift that even Daniel didn't have time to react. The dog launched itself directly at his right arm, the one holding the detonator. A shrill scream ripped through the terminal. Daniel collapsed backward, the stroller tipping sideways. The red counter was displayed in large, 00:01:19. The agents shouted. Now! Mark charged forward, throwing himself to the ground beside his dog. He grabbed Daniel's wrist, fighting against his desperate resistance. Rex growled ferociously, holding the man's forearm firmly in his fangs, preventing him from fully depressing the trigger. Emily screamed, unable to move, paralyzed with fear. Disarm him. Collins shouted, gun pointed at Daniel. I'm trying. Mark replied, breathless. The struggle was fierce. Daniel, drunk with rage and despair, still found an almost superhuman strength. His fingers slipped dangerously toward the end of the button's travel. The meter displayed 00:00:58. Mark, in a final burst of energy, placed his knee on Daniel's chest and yelled to his dog. Rex, don't give up. With a sharp jerk, he managed to twist the man's wrist. Cracking, a dull sound rang out. Daniel screamed in pain, and his fingers released the detonator. The entire terminal held its breath. The red screen flashed, then abruptly went dark. Silence. The countdown had just been stopped abruptly. Mark stared at the mechanism, panting. His hands were still shaking, but there were no numbers. No more beeps. Nothing. Rex, still on top of Daniel, was still growling, ready to tear him apart at the slightest movement. Then Collins, stepping forward calmly, uttered these icy words. "This isn't over yet. You have no idea what you just unleashed." The terminal was plunged into a heavy silence, punctuated only by Rex's panting breaths and Daniel's moans on the ground. The passengers, still frozen in fear, were beginning to understand the extent of the danger they had just avoided. Collins walked toward Mark and the other officers. His gaze was serious, almost dark. "Listen to me, everyone. You think it was over, but you're wrong." Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" "The bomb is deactivated." Collins shook his head. "This one, yes. But it was just a test. A warning." He pointed to the overturned stroller and the deactivated detonator. "They wanted to know how far their pawns could go. Do you think Daniel and Emily are alone?" "No. This cell was never isolated. They have other plans, other devices, other innocents to threaten." Emily, still trembling, collapsed to her knees. "You mean, there are others?" Collins nodded coldly. "Yes. And time is against us. If we don't find the other devices soon, there will be casualties. Hundreds." Rex growled, as if understanding the magnitude of the threat. Mark placed a hand on his head, trying to calm the dog, but he himself felt his anxiety rising. Daniel, still on the ground, groaned in pain. His rebellion was over, but his eyes still shone with a fierce light. You don't understand anything," he murmurs. "We understand enough to arrest you," Collins replied, without taking his eyes off the detonator. The entire terminal was slowly coming to its senses, but the tension remained palpable. Every step, every breath could trigger new chaos. Mark looked at Rex, then Emily, then Daniel. His instincts told him this was just the beginning. "So, what do we do now?" he asked, his voice tight. Collins stared at him intensely. "Now, we find the others. And we neutralize the threat before it's too late." The fear meter in everyone's hearts had just gone up a notch. The airport was no longer just the scene of a failed attack, but of an invisible war against an organization no one had yet seen. The terminal was now secure, but the anxiety persisted. Passengers were being evacuated, some in tears, others still in shock at what they had experienced. Rex remained by Mark's side, his muscles tense, his ears pricked. The animal seemed to sense that the danger had not yet passed. Collins knelt beside Daniel, still panting and hurting. "You will cooperate, otherwise you are no longer just a pawn." Daniel, his head bowed, murmured. "You don't understand, they have eyes everywhere. Even here, even now." Mark exchanged a look with Collins. The message was clear, what they had just unraveled was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Emily, still jolted by adrenaline, approached her husband. "Daniel, what did we do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Collins straightened and gestured for Mark to follow him. "We have to leave. Now. Every minute counts. The cell has other plans, and what we just defused is only the first step." Mark nodded, his throat tight. Rex barked, as if to confirm, the danger was far from over. As they exited the terminal, something caught Mark's attention. An information screen at the entrance displayed delayed and cancelled flights. But among the announcements, one message was flashing rapidly. "All movements at the airport are under surveillance. Priority subject, suspicious stroller, active monitoring." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. Someone else knew. Someone else was watching them. Collins whispered in his ear. "This is just the beginning, and believe me, we don't know how much yet." The security camera still captured every step, every movement. And in the shadows, somewhere outside the terminal, a masked figure smiled, invisible but fully aware that the game had only just begun. The countdown was not over.